The stars above seemed like cold, distant fireflies, scattered across the dark expanse of space. For over a century, the Deathworlder's home planet had been under the constant shadow of an alien siege. The invaders, a ruthless empire from the far reaches of the galaxy, had set their sights on the Deathworlder's rich resources, and they would not stop until the planet was theirs. But the Deathworlders were not like other species. They had survived the harshest of environments, fought against the most dangerous beasts, and now they were fighting for their survival against an enemy far superior in technology and numbers. The alien fleet, a massive and terrifying force, had surrounded the planet, cutting off all trade routes and communications. They thought it would be a matter of time before the Deathworlders would surrender, bowing before the might of the Empire. But there was one thing they didn't understand. The Deathworlders never gave up. On the planet's surface, life continued as it always had. The cities were bustling, the farmers worked in the fields, and the children played in the streets. Life had a sense of normalcy, despite the constant threat above. But deep within the government's command centers, the truth was clear. The aliens would not stop until the Deathworlders were crushed. The Empire's forces had already wiped out several neighboring systems, and their advances showed no signs of slowing down. Their fleets were equipped with the most advanced weaponry, and their soldiers were trained for ruthless efficiency. For a century, they had maintained the siege, bombarding the planet's defenses with relentless attacks. Yet the Deathworlders had withstood it all, refusing to let their world fall. The siege was long and painful, but it was not over. In the heart of the capital city, high above in the command towers, General Calder stood by the large observation window, watching the distant flashes of battle in the sky. He was an old man now, his hair streaked with gray, his face worn from years of war. The endless struggle had taken its toll, but he still had fire in his heart. The alien invaders had underestimated the Deathworlders, thinking they would be easy prey. But the Deathworlders were survivors, and survival was in their blood. Calder's eyes narrowed as he watched the alien fleet regrouping, preparing for their next assault. He had been in the war since the beginning, watching as his people fought bravely, always holding their ground. He knew they were close to the breaking point, but he also knew something the aliens did not. The Deathworlders had a secret weapon, a weapon that was about to make all the difference. Down below, in the barracks, the young Deathworlder cadets were preparing for their first mission. They were a new generation of warriors, trained in the harshest environments the galaxy had to offer. Their bodies were tough, their minds sharp, and they had one goal in mind: to defend their home. The Empire had destroyed entire fleets, taken planets, and slaughtered millions, but the cadets had something the aliens didn't: fearless determination. They had been prepared for this moment their entire lives. These cadets were not just soldiers. They were the future of their people, the ones who would end the century-long siege and free their planet from the aliens. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to face the challenge of their lives. They would be up against a powerful, well-trained enemy, but they had something that the Empire never counted on: the ability to think outside the box, to adapt and survive in the face of overwhelming odds. As the cadets assembled in the training rooms, their instructors gave them one last briefing. "Remember," said Captain Riva, the commander of the cadet battalion, "you are not just fighting for yourselves. You are fighting for your families, for your planet, and for the future of the Deathworlders. You may be young, but you are the strongest fighters the galaxy has ever seen. Do not let the Empire break you." The cadets nodded, their faces set with determination. They knew what was at stake. Their people had lived under the Empire's siege for far too long, and they were ready to end it. They had trained their whole lives for this moment. Now, it was time to show the galaxy what the Deathworlders were truly capable of. Calder stood in the command center, watching as the cadets prepared to board their ships. He could feel the weight of history on their shoulders. The fate of the planet rested in their hands. But as he looked at their young faces, he saw something else: hope. Hope that, for the first time in a century, they could end this war. The cadets took their positions, ready to launch into space. The command center buzzed with activity as the fleet was readied for battle. Kaldor turned to his officers and said, "It's time. Launch the fleet." The battle for their home was about to begin. As the cadet fleet soared into the sky, the aliens watching from their ships were preparing for what they thought would be a routine battle. They didn't know it yet, but this time, the Deathworlders were not going to hold back. The siege was ending today. The fleet flew into the heart of the alien forces. The aliens were expecting a drawn-out fight, a battle that would last for hours, maybe even days. But the cadets had a different plan. They had been taught to think fast, strike hard, and never give up. They didn't have the luxury of time, and they didn't intend to waste it. As the first cadet ships entered the fray, they were like a swarm of deadly insects, darting in and out of the alien ships. The Empire was unprepared for the speed and precision of the Deathworlder cadets. Every move they made was calculated, every strike precise. The alien forces were already starting to panic. The battle had begun, and the aliens were in for a rude awakening. They thought they had the upper hand, but they didn't know who they were fighting. They didn't know they were up against a new generation of warriors who were about to change everything. The ancient siege that had lasted a century was about to end in the most unexpected way. The Deathworlders had been underestimated, and now the Empire would face the consequences of their mistake. The tide of battle was turning, and it was only a matter of time before the cadets would end the siege once and for all. The Deathworlder cadet fleet moved swiftly through the endless darkness of space, their ships cutting through the void with purpose. Inside, the cadets were focused, their eyes sharp and minds honed to perfection. They had trained for this day, learned every trick, every tactic to survive in the harshest conditions, and now, with the fate of their planet on their shoulders, they were ready. Their mission was clear: end the century-long siege in one strike, destroy the Empire's hold on their world, and show the galaxy the true strength of the Deathworlders. Captain Riva, who had been guiding these cadets since their first days in training, stood at the front of the command bridge of the lid ship. Her face was calm, but inside, her heart beat with the fire of 1,000 battles. She had seen too many battles lost, too many lives sacrificed for the sake of a slow war of attrition. But this time was different. She had seen these cadets grow, learn, and become warriors unlike any others. "Remember," Captain Riva said, speaking to her young crew as the first wave of ships lined up behind hers, "the Empire expects us to fall into their trap. They'll try to break our lines, overpower us with their firepower, and drag this into a battle of endurance. But we won't fight that way. We'll hit them fast, hit them hard, and leave them wondering what hit them." The cadets nodded in unison. They knew what had to be done. Time was their enemy, and they could not afford to drag this fight out any longer. They had to show the Empire that the Deathworlders were more than just survivors. They were conquerors, fighters that could turn the tide of war in an instant. "Prepare for immediate engagement," Captain Riva ordered. "This will be the fastest, most brutal assault the Empire has ever seen. We are not waiting for reinforcements. We are not waiting for backup. We will take the Empire's fleet apart piece by piece." The young cadets, their faces set with grim determination, went to their stations, each one fully aware of the importance of the task ahead. There was no room for mistakes. They had been trained to think on their feet, to outmaneuver enemies much stronger than themselves, to act before their opponents even realized what was happening. They were about to put everything they had learned to the test. The cadet ships flew toward the alien fleet with incredible speed. Their movements were synchronized, as if they were one mind controlling hundreds of ships. They knew their mission: break the Empire's formation, destroy their command ships, and dismantle the entire siege in less than 20 minutes. It was an impossible task, one that had never been done before. But the Deathworlders weren't here to do what had been done before. They were here to rewrite the rules. As the cadets approached the alien fleet, their ships dropped into an unanticipated formation. The Empire's ships were used to facing traditional assaults. Slow, methodical advances, overwhelming firepower. But the Deathworlders had learned from their mistakes, studied every flaw in the Empire's tactics. They knew how to get in close without being detected, how to slip past enemy lines without triggering alarms, how to outmaneuver and confuse an army that thought it was unbeatable. The first alien ship exploded in a flash of light, caught off guard by the unexpected attack. The Empire's forces scrambled to respond. But by then, the Deathworlders were already everywhere. Small, agile ships darted in and out of the larger alien craft, slipping through cracks in the defenses. They aimed for weak spots, areas where the Empire had failed to reinforce their vessels properly. At the same time, the larger Deathworlder ships moved in close, using their heavy weaponry to break apart the Empire's formation, leaving their enemies in disarray. The alien fleet had been expecting a battle, but this was no ordinary fight. The Cadets weren't following the Empire's rules. They were rewriting them. The Empire's commanders were stunned. They had assumed that with their overwhelming numbers, the Deathworlders would fold under pressure. But here they were, outnumbered, outgunned. And still, they were pushing the Empire back. The Empire's grand plan was falling apart, piece by piece, and no one knew how to stop it. Inside the Deathworlder command ship, Captain Riva observed the chaos with a quiet smile. The battle was progressing even faster than she had hoped. The Empire had fallen into the trap, their pride blinding them to the Deathworlder's true potential. "We've got them on the ropes," Captain Riva said to her crew, her voice steady and commanding. "Keep up the pressure. We break their command structure next. Once their leadership crumbles, the rest will fall apart." As the cadet ships tore through the enemy lines, Captain Riva's mind was focused on one goal: to cripple the Empire's ability to lead, to command, to fight back. The sooner their leaders were taken out, the sooner the Empire would realize that it had underestimated the Deathworlders. That no matter how many ships they had, no matter how much firepower they controlled, they could never defeat a species that fought not just for victory, but for their very survival. The first of the alien command ships fell under the Deathworlders' relentless assault. The explosion lit up the battlefield like a second sun, casting long shadows across the black expanse of space. The Deathworlders had struck their first victory in this fast-paced battle, and it was only the beginning. "Phase 2 is a go," Captain Riva declared. "Now we hit them where it hurts, take out their fleet's backbone, and the rest will crumble." As the Deathworlders moved deeper into the heart of the Empire's forces, they could feel the momentum shifting. The once feared alien fleet was now in chaos, struggling to keep up with the relentless speed and ferocity of the Cadets. And with every explosion, every fallen ship, the Empire's grip on the galaxy weakened. The siege that had lasted a century was now teetering on the brink of collapse, all because of the audacious, unexpected tactics of the Deathworlder Cadets. The Empire had never imagined they would face such a response, and now it was too late to stop the tide of battle from turning in the Deathworlders' favor. The Empire's arrogance had led to its downfall, and in just 20 minutes, the Cadets would show the galaxy the true power of the Deathworlders, a species that never gave up, never surrendered, and always fought until the very end. The battlefield was chaos. Space had always been a vast and empty expanse, but now it felt like the very air was thick with destruction. Every explosion, every burst of firepower, left its mark on the cold expanse of the void. The Empire's once dominant fleet was crumbling under the relentless assault of the Deathworlder Cadets. The Cadets, driven by training, fury, and the will to survive, knew the Empire's hold on their world would end here. The siege had lasted a century, but it would not last another day. The lead ship, the flagship of the Cadet fleet, cut through the destruction like a knife. Captain Riva stood tall, her eyes never leaving the chaotic battlefield unfolding before her. Behind her, the command bridge was a flurry of activity. The Cadets were in perfect sync, each one performing their tasks with precision and confidence. The Empire's forces were scrambling. Their superior firepower, their advanced technology, had been nothing against the relentless onslaught of the Deathworlder cadets. The Empire's warships, designed for strength and dominance, were now reduced to floating debris, their armor and shields no match for the cadets' agile and unpredictable tactics. "We've broken through their first line," Lieutenant Darnell reported from the tactical station. His voice was calm, but the pride in his eyes was undeniable. "We're almost through the next wave. They're not regrouping. They're panicking." "Good," Captain Riva said, her voice low and determined. "Keep the pressure on. They won't know what hit them." The strategy was simple, but devastating. The cadets had struck fast and hard, taking the Empire by surprise. Their ships, small and nimble, had darted in and out of the larger enemy vessels, striking at weak points, tearing apart shields, and causing chaos in the Empire's ranks. It was a hit-and-run tactic that left the enemy forces confused, unable to respond effectively. The cadet ships didn't just attack. They overwhelmed. Each strike felt like 100. Each hit was another layer of pressure. The Empire had expected to defeat the Deathworlders, slowly grinding them down over time. But the cadets had a different plan. They weren't here to drag out the fight. They were here to end it. As the battle continued, the cadet fleet struck again and again, ripping apart the Empire's defenses with terrifying speed. The Empire's strategy of holding the line with brute force had failed. Now, there was only disorder. On the outer edge of the battlefield, another massive explosion lit up the void. A flagship of the Empire, the largest ship in their fleet, was reduced to nothing but debris. Its shields had failed, and its core had been breached. The cadets had targeted its weak points with surgical precision, striking in places no one had thought to strike. "Another one down," Lieutenant Darnell said, almost with disbelief. Their flagship, gone. Captain Riva's gaze remained focused on the battlefield. She wasn't celebrating just yet. They still had work to do. But the destruction was undeniable. The Empire's greatest strength had been shattered. And now, the Deathworlders had complete control of the battlefield. "We're about to hit their command ships," Riva said, her voice steady. "Once they fall, the rest will scatter." It was the heart of the plan. The Empire had relied on centralized command to coordinate their forces, trusting that their generals and admirals would be able to organize their fleets no matter what happened. But the Deathworlders knew better. By taking out the leadership, they would cause the entire Empire to lose cohesion, unraveling the siege in a matter of minutes. The cadet ships sped toward the heart of the Empire's formation, where the command vessels hovered in a seemingly unbreakable formation. But the Deathworlders had already identified their weak spots. The cadet fleet swarmed the command ships, bypassing their defenses with the skill and ferocity that only Deathworlders possessed. Explosions erupted from every direction as the cadets fired their weapons with deadly precision. The Empire's command ships, once thought invincible, were now crumbling under the barrage. And still, the cadets pressed on, relentless in their pursuit. The last of the command ships exploded in a brilliant burst of fire, sending shockwaves through the remaining Empire vessels. The loss of their leaders had thrown the Empire's forces into complete disarray. Without guidance, without a plan, they were like a ship adrift in a storm. They were no longer a cohesive fighting force. They were a broken, scattered mass of ships fighting only for survival. And that was when it happened. The last remnants of the Empire's fleet, those ships that had once believed they could crush the Deathworlders without a second thought, began to turn and flee. It was a sight Captain Riva had longed to see, but now that it was happening, she felt no joy. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The Empire had been humiliated. Their century-long siege had been undone in the blink of an eye. Their forces had been shattered, and their pride had been crushed. "Phase 1 complete," Captain Riva said, as her voice echoed through the command room. "But this isn't over yet. Let's finish this." The Empire had underestimated the Deathworlders. They had thought the Cadets would be no match for their overwhelming strength. But the Deathworlders weren't just survivors, they were fighters. And the galaxy had just learned that no one could stand against them. The siege had been broken in under 20 minutes, and the Empire would never forget the lesson they had learned that day. The final push had begun. The once mighty Empire, which had taken over countless worlds with its advanced technology and brutal force, was now on the edge of annihilation. Its centuries-old siege had crumbled within 20 minutes, a shockwave of destruction that echoed across the galaxy. The remaining enemy ships, once filled with confidence and pride, were now turning tail and running. But even as the Empire's forces scattered, the Deathworlder Cadets pressed on, determined to complete their mission. In the heart of the Cadet fleet, Captain Riva stood at the helm of her flagship, her sharp eyes scanning the broken battlefield. The fire of battle still blazed in the distance, but it was fading. The Empire's resistance was weak, their command structure shattered beyond repair. The Deathworlders had done what no one thought possible. They had completely dismantled the Empire's century-long siege in under 20 minutes. "We've got them on the run," Lieutenant Darnell said, his voice a mix of disbelief and satisfaction. "Their fleet is scattering in every direction." "Don't celebrate yet," Captain Riva responded coolly. "The Empire's forces may be retreating, but we need to make sure they never return. We finish this today." There was no time to relax. The Empire's surviving ships, though in disarray, were still dangerous. Their remaining forces had begun to scatter across the sector, hoping to regroup and lick their wounds. The Cadets couldn't afford to let them slip away and rebuild. They had to finish what they'd started, end the siege, and ensure the Empire never threatened them again. Riva gave the order, and the fleet surged forward. The Cadets had a job to do, and it wasn't just about defeating the enemy. It was about sending a message that would echo through the galaxy for generations. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity had turned the tide, and no one would dare underestimate them again. The Cadet ships darted across the battlefield, their smaller, faster designs allowing them to outmaneuver the fleeing Empire vessels. Each ship struck swiftly and decisively. The Empire had no time to react. Their surviving ships, already damaged and disorganized, were easy prey for the Cadets' relentless assault. "We're closing in on their last stronghold," Lieutenant Darnell reported. "The rest of their ships are scattering. They're done." Riva nodded, but she remained focused. "Not yet. We still have work to do." It wasn't just about defeating the Empire's fleet. It was about completely destroying their ability to recover. The Cadets targeted the Empire's remaining strongholds, space stations, command posts, and logistical hubs that could have served as a lifeline for the retreating fleet. The Empire had once believed it could maintain control over the galaxy by overwhelming its enemies with sheer force. But now, it was all coming apart, piece by piece. As the Cadets cut down the Empire's last defenses, the remaining fleet commanders began to panic. Communications between their ships grew erratic. Officers shouted orders, but their voices were drowned out by the sound of explosions and alarms. The Empire had once been unstoppable, but now they were nothing more than a broken and disjointed force, unable to even communicate with one another effectively. The sight of the Empire's downfall was almost surreal to Captain Riva. For years, the galaxy had watched as the Empire's strength grew, as their reach extended to every corner of space. Now, in a matter of hours, they were watching it all unravel. The Cadets had done the impossible, and they had done it in record time. It was a victory that would be remembered forever. But for Riva, there was no time for celebration. She was a soldier, and the war was not yet won. She had seen how quickly the tides of battle could turn, how one mistake could cost everything. The Cadets' mission was clear. They needed to ensure the Empire never threatened them again. "We've done enough damage," Riva said, turning to Lieutenant Darnell. "But there's one last thing to do. We need to send them a message that will echo across the galaxy." The fleet moved swiftly, heading toward the heart of the Empire's remaining power, their final stronghold. A massive space station that had once served as a hub for the Empire's forces was all that remained. If they destroyed it, the Empire would have no way to rebuild, no way to regroup, no way to challenge the Deathworlders again. Captain Rava's ship led the charge. The Deathworlder fleet gathered around it, forming a tight formation that would leave no room for escape for the enemy. The space station was massive, its size almost intimidating, but the Cadets weren't afraid. They knew exactly what needed to be done. "Lock on all weapons," Riva commanded. "Target their core. We end this now." The final assault began. The cadet ships unleashed their firepower in a synchronized attack that tore into the station's defenses. The Empire's surviving ships attempted to provide cover, but it was too late. The Cadets were faster, more agile, and far more determined. Explosions rocked the station as the Cadets' weapons found their marks. The Empire's last stronghold began to crumble. As the station's core ignited, sending shockwaves through the space around it, the remaining Empire vessels made a last-ditch effort to escape. But it was futile. The station's destruction marked the end of the Empire's century-long siege. As the dust settled, the Deathworlder fleet stood victorious. The Empire was defeated, and their siege was no more. But even in victory, Captain Riva remained focused. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson that day. The Deathworlders were not to be underestimated, and the Empire had just learned that lesson the hard way. "Mission complete," Riva said, her voice calm but resolute. "Let's head home." The Deathworlders had proven that they could accomplish the impossible. In 20 minutes, they had turned the tide of a century-old war and sent a message to the galaxy that would not be forgotten. No one would ever again question the strength and resolve of humanity. The destruction of the Empire's last stronghold sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The once feared Empire, which had taken a century to establish dominance, was wiped out in a matter of minutes. The galactic community, who had once bowed before the Empire's might, now stood in stunned silence, unsure of what to make of the events that had unfolded. The Deathworlders, humanity's finest warriors, had rewritten the rules of war in a way no one thought possible. Across the galaxy, news spread like wildfire. The word impossible was on everyone's lips. How could a group of cadets, mere trainees, have taken down an empire that had held the galaxy in its grip for so long? How could they have ended a siege that had lasted over 100 years in the span of just 20 minutes? For the first time in a long while, the galaxy's major factions were forced to reckon with a new and terrifying reality. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The Deathworlders had proven their might, and the consequences of underestimating them were now clear. As the last remnants of the Empire's forces scattered, the galaxy watched as humanity's cadets returned home. Their fleet was battered but triumphant. Captain Riva, the leader of the cadet fleet, was hailed as a hero by her comrades, but she knew that their work was far from over. There was still a long road ahead. While the Empire had been defeated, the galaxy was still full of threats, and humanity had to be prepared for whatever came next. Despite the victory, Captain Riva felt the weight of the responsibility that came with it. The galaxy had witnessed the Deathworlders' power, but they had also witnessed their mercy. Humanity could have obliterated the remnants of the Empire, wiped them from existence, but instead they had allowed them to escape with their lives. It was a decision that weighed heavily on Riva's mind. "I hope we made the right choice," she muttered to herself, standing on the deck of her flagship, staring out at the stars. "But I have to believe we did." Lieutenant Darnell, who had been by her side throughout the battle, stepped up beside her. "We did what we had to, Captain. The galaxy is never going to forget this. No one will ever challenge us again." Riva nodded but didn't say anything. The truth was, she didn't know what the future held. She knew humanity's reputation had changed overnight, but with that newfound power came new responsibilities. The Deathworlders weren't just a force of destruction. They were now a beacon of hope for the galaxy's oppressed species, and that wasn't a responsibility she took lightly. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread just as rapidly. People cheered, their voices echoing in the streets as they celebrated their heroes. But there was something else in the air, a sense of uncertainty. The galaxy had just witnessed humanity's wrath, but there were other forces out there, and they were watching closely. The Deathworlders had sent a clear message. Never again would humanity be silenced. But as the celebrations died down, questions began to emerge. Would humanity be able to maintain this power? Could they protect the galaxy from future threats? And perhaps most importantly, how long before the next empire rose to challenge them? The galaxy's political landscape had shifted, and the balance of power was now in flux. The great empires that once dominated the stars now had to contend with humanity's might. The galaxy's alliances were shaken, and everyone was forced to reconsider their positions. No one knew who would rise next, but one thing was certain: no species would risk entering humanity again. In the days following the battle, Captain Riva and her crew were invited to a council meeting with the leaders of various galactic factions. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy were present, their eyes fixed on humanity with a mix of fear, admiration, and caution. "We have all witnessed your victory," the leader of the Xanthi Empire began, his voice cold and calculating. "But tell me, Captain Riva, what is it that you want from us? Your victory has made you the most powerful force in the galaxy. What are you going to do with that power?" Riva stood tall, her eyes scanning the room. "We're not here to conquer," she said firmly. "We're here to protect. The days of empires terrorizing innocent species are over. But make no mistake, we will defend ourselves, and we will defend those who cannot defend themselves. Humanity will not be a tool for your ambitions." There was a long silence in the room as the representatives exchanged uneasy glances. They had never faced anything like this before. The Deathworlders had proven themselves, and the galaxy was left to decide how to respond to this new reality. As the council session drew to a close, Captain Riva left the room with her crew. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on her. Humanity had made a statement, but the true challenge was just beginning. They had shown the galaxy their strength, but it was how they wielded that strength that would define their future. As the Cadet fleet prepared to head back to Earth, Captain Riva felt a strange sense of unease. They had won, but the galaxy had changed in ways no one could fully comprehend. It was a new era, one where humanity was no longer the underdog, and that terrified her in ways she couldn't explain. But for now, all she could do was look ahead. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity, but would that fear lead to respect? Or would it spiral into something darker? Only time would tell. The galaxy was a place of constant change, and with the fall of the Empire, it was clear that everything was shifting. The death of a once mighty force sent ripples through the cosmos, leaving behind a void that would inevitably be filled. Humanity, the Deathworlders, had proven their power, but now they were faced with the aftermath, the rebuilding of a galaxy that was never truly united to begin with. Across the galaxy, factions watched the human victory with a mix of awe and fear. While some saw it as an opportunity to align with the new dominant power, others looked for ways to challenge humanity's newfound supremacy. As much as the galaxy had changed, old wounds and rivalries still festered beneath the surface. Back on Earth, Captain Riva stood in a secure briefing room, surrounded by her most trusted commanders. Their victory over the Empire had made waves, and it wasn't just the other species who were concerned. Humanity had become a superpower in the galaxy, and with that came enormous responsibility. The Earth's government was under increasing pressure to make a decision. What role would humanity play in the future of the galaxy? Would they act as an empire themselves, conquering and imposing their will on others, or would they follow a different path? "Captain, the leaders are asking for a decision," Lieutenant Darnell said, his voice tense. "We can't keep stalling. The galaxy is waiting to see what we do next." Ryga rubbed her temples, trying to process everything. The weight of the decision pressed down on her, and she knew that the next move would define humanity's place in the stars. "We can't just become another empire," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "We're not the same as the empire we just destroyed. We fight for something different." Darnell nodded, but the concern was clear in his eyes. "But the galaxy won't see it that way. They see strength, and they see a potential threat." Captain Ryva turned to the viewscreen in front of her, watching as the distant stars flickered in the void. "We'll have to show them. We'll form new alliances, real alliances, and we'll help those who can't defend themselves." The council meeting was set, and the future of humanity's galactic involvement would be decided in that room. As the fleet prepared to make its way to the council chamber, Ryva couldn't shake the sense that the meeting wasn't just about peace, it was about power, and power had its price. As the council convened, representatives from various galactic factions took their seats. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Many had already begun forming their opinions about humanity's role in the galaxy. Some, like the leaders of the Xanthi Empire, had already begun courting humanity, eager to secure their place by their side. Others, particularly the smaller oppressed species, watched with cautious optimism, hoping humanity would offer them protection from larger, more oppressive powers. "We are here today because the galaxy has witnessed something extraordinary," the High Chancellor of the Rarath Coalition began, his voice steady but filled with underlying tension. "The Deathworlders, humanity, have proven themselves to be the strongest force in the galaxy. But strength alone does not guarantee peace." The room was silent. Every representative was waiting to hear how humanity would respond. Captain Ryva stood, her posture confident, yet her mind raced. The time had come to make her case. She wasn't just representing humanity's military might. She was representing a new vision for the future, one where the galaxy could find peace, even in the face of overwhelming power. "We are not here to dominate," Ryva began, her voice cutting through the room. "We are here to protect. The galaxy has suffered under the rule of empires, the kind that have been built on fear and oppression. Humanity has seen what such power does. We refuse to walk that path." A murmur rippled through the room. Some were skeptical, others were curious. This wasn't the speech they expected from humanity's leaders. "The empire we destroyed," she continued, "it was a regime built on control. We could have wiped them out completely, left nothing behind. But we chose not to. We showed mercy because we believe in the future. In a galaxy where species don't fear one another, where alliances are built on respect, not subjugation." Her words hung in the air, and the council members exchanged uncertain glances. Many of them had heard the whispers about humanity's growing power, but now they were hearing it directly from the source. "We are not your enemies," Ryva concluded. "We are humanity. We have stood up to the most dangerous force the galaxy has ever seen, and we did it not with cruelty, but with strength and honor. This is who we are, and this is who we will be. If you are willing to stand with us, we will fight for peace. If not, we will protect ourselves, and anyone who threatens the peace of this galaxy." The room fell silent. There was no immediate applause or cheers, but something shifted in the atmosphere. The other species had seen the Deathworlders' might and their mercy. It was clear that humanity had proven itself, not just as conquerors, but as a force for something greater. "We will consider your offer," the High Chancellor said after a long pause. "But understand this, the galaxy does not change overnight." Ryva nodded. "No, it doesn't. But we're willing to fight for that change, no matter how long it takes." As the council session ended, Captain Ryva felt a sense of quiet relief. The decision hadn't been made yet, but humanity's message had been sent. The future was uncertain, but humanity had proven that it was ready to shape it on its own terms. The galaxy now knew that no species would ever risk angering humanity again, and with that knowledge came a new kind of peace, one forged in the fires of battle, and the strength of resolve. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity, but the true test was yet to come. Would they respect humanity as an ally, or would they continue to see them as a threat? Only time would tell. The stars shimmered across the void, and the once fractured galaxy now found itself at the crossroads of a new era. The council meeting had been only the beginning, a first step in what would surely become a much longer journey. Humanity had spoken, and for the first time in galactic history, its voice echoed with the power of truth and the weight of victory. But the road ahead was not an easy one. Captain Riva stood on the balcony of the command center aboard the human flagship, the Valor's Heart, looking out into the dark expanse of space. The fleet had returned to Earth, but the real battles were just beginning. The galaxy, despite what many might think, was not a place of peace. It was a place where alliances were fragile, where betrayal was common, and where strength was the only language that truly spoke. The other species had listened to humanity's promise of peace, but there were still those who doubted. They believed humanity's strength would make them oppressive conquerors. They feared that humanity would take what they wanted and crush anyone who opposed them. But Captain Riva knew better. Humanity had shown mercy in the face of absolute power. They had proven that they could destroy, yes, but they also had the strength to build something greater than empires. And with that power came responsibility, a responsibility they would not take lightly. They had learned from the past, from the mistakes of the ancient empires that had ravaged the galaxy. Humanity's future would be one of protection and honor, not domination. As Riva pondered this, the voice of Lieutenant Darnell broke through her thoughts. "Captain, you might want to see this," he said, his tone urgent. "The new alliance proposals are coming in." The council members, in their own way, had begun to respond to humanity's message. Some had already sent representatives to Earth, eager to formalize alliances with the new galactic power. Others, less certain, had sent envoys with requests for meetings, curious to see if humanity's promises could be trusted. Riva turned and followed Darnell into the command room, where a holographic map of the galaxy was projected above the table. The different species and their territories were marked with various colors, signifying their allegiance or neutrality. Some were already in agreement with humanity, while others remained unsure. "The Zoriths have already pledged their loyalty," Darnell said, pointing to a glowing blue sector. "And the Verklins are asking for a mutual defense pact. But there are others, many more, who are still hesitant. They're watching us, waiting to see if we'll hold to our promises." Riva examined the map closely. She knew that the next step was crucial. Humanity had to prove that it wasn't just strong, it was trustworthy. The galaxy was full of warriors and conquerors, but it lacked true leaders who could unite its many species under a banner of peace. "We'll start with the Verklins," she said, her voice firm. "They're an ancient species, honorable in their own right. If we can earn their trust, others will follow." The next few weeks were filled with diplomatic talks, the weight of humanity's promises hanging heavy in every negotiation. Riva and her team worked tirelessly, carefully balancing the need for military strength with the desire for lasting peace. They sent emissaries to distant worlds, met with leaders, and made it clear that humanity would not be the cause of more bloodshed unless absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy watched with bated breath. The question that everyone asked was simple: would humanity live up to its promises, or would they become just another empire, ruling with an iron fist? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. The first true test came when the small, isolated planet of Talvri Prime was attacked by a raiding fleet from a rogue faction of the Dominion. Talvri Prime was known for its peaceful farming communities and had no real defenses to speak of. Its people were weak, defenseless. When the Dominion's ships descended on the planet, it seemed as though the end was inevitable. But humanity had made a promise. Within hours of receiving the distress call, the Valor's Heart was en route, with a fleet of human warships in tow. Captain Riva knew that this was the moment to prove humanity's true character. They could have simply wiped out the rogue faction in a show of power. But that wasn't the plan. Instead, They sent a message. Humanity would protect the helpless. The battle was fierce. The Dominion raiders had no idea what was coming for them. As the human fleet arrived in orbit around Talvary Prime, they unleashed a full-scale assault, not to destroy the raiders, but to disable them. The human ships deployed their advanced technology, disarming the enemy vessels and rendering them powerless. In mere hours, the battle was over. The Dominion raiders were captured, their ships rendered useless, and the people of Talvary Prime were safe. News of humanity's victory spread like wildfire across the galaxy. For the first time, other species saw what humanity was capable of. They had the power to crush their enemies, but they chose to show mercy. They had the strength to rule with fear, but they chose to build alliances based on trust. It was a message that resonated across the stars. The Dominion, now humiliated, withdrew into the depths of space, and other factions began to reconsider their stance on humanity. The warlords who had once seen humanity as a potential threat now saw them as a valuable ally. The galaxy began to change, slowly but surely, as species realized that humanity was a force for peace, not destruction. But there was still work to be done. The scars of centuries of war would not fade easily. Alliances were fragile, and there were still those who wished to see humanity fall. But with every victory, with every alliance, humanity's legacy grew stronger. In the end, the galaxy knew one thing for certain. No species would risk angering humanity again. They had seen what the Deathworlders were capable of, and they had learned that while humanity's power was unmatched, it was the strength of their honor and their mercy that made them truly unstoppable. Humanity had forged its place in the stars. The galaxy would never be the same again.